The golden hour painted the village in warm amber hues as three small figures darted between the weathered cottages, their laughter floating on the evening breeze like dandelion seeds. Alex led the way with confident strides, sandy hair catching the last rays of sunlight, while Mia followed close behind, her dark braids bouncing with each step. Jamie, the youngest of the trio, struggled to keep pace, determination etched across freckled cheeks as tiny legs pumped furiously through the tall grass. The ancient oak tree stood at the meadow's edge, its massive trunk wider than three grown-ups, holding hands, branches stretching toward the darkening sky like gnarled fingers reaching for the first emerging stars. This tree had watched over the village for countless generations, its roots running deep beneath the earth, holding secrets that only the wind knew how to whisper. The children had played beneath its protective canopy since they could barely walk, but tonight something felt different, something magical stirring in the cooling air. Fireflies began their evening ballet, tiny lanterns blinking in mysterious patterns that seemed almost like a language waiting to be understood. Alex noticed it first, a peculiar glow emanating from within the oak's hollow trunk, different from the gentle pulse of the fireflies. The light seemed steadier, warmer, calling to them with an ancient invitation. The three friends exchanged glances, eyes wide with curiosity, and just a hint of nervous excitement. Mia approached the hollow first, her small hand reaching tentatively toward the opening that had always been there, but never seemed quite so inviting. The bark felt warm beneath her fingertips, almost alive with a gentle thrumming that matched her quickening heartbeat. Inside the hollow, partially buried beneath decades of fallen leaves and acorns, something glimmered with an otherworldly luminescence. Jamie squeezed between the others, eager to see what had captured their attention. Together, they carefully brushed away the natural debris, revealing what appeared to be an old scroll wrapped in fabric that shimmered like moonlight on water. The material felt impossibly soft, neither silk nor cotton, but something altogether more extraordinary, as if woven from dreams themselves. With trembling fingers, Alex unrolled the ancient map, and all three children gasped in unified wonder. The parchment glowed with its own inner light, revealing illustrations that seemed to move and breathe before their eyes. Floating islands drifted across the surface, tethered to nothing but clouds, their surfaces covered in gardens where flowers bloomed in colours they had no names for. Winding paths made of starlight connected each floating realm, and tiny creatures they had only heard about in bedtime stories danced along the margins. The map showed their village at one corner, rendered in perfect miniature detail, even showing their three tiny figures gathered beneath the oak tree at this very moment. From there, a golden thread wound its way through illustrated forests where trees wore crowns of silver leaves, across rivers that flowed upward toward the sky, and through valleys where the grass sang lullabies to passing travelers. Mia traced her finger along one particularly enchanting path that led to what appeared to be a garden suspended in mid-air, where butterflies with wings like stained glass windows fluttered between flowers that chimed like bells. Jamie pointed excitedly at an illustration of a bridge made entirely of rainbow light, spanning a chasm filled with friendly clouds that had smiling faces. Alex studied the careful notations written in flowing script along the edges, symbols and words, in a language that felt familiar despite being completely unknown. The evening deepened around them, purple shadows stretching long fingers across the meadow, but the map's gentle radiance kept the approaching darkness at bay. Stars began their nightly emergence, first one, then another, until the sky resembled the very paths illustrated on the ancient parchment. The children huddled closer together, shoulders touching, sharing the warmth of discovery and the delicious thrill of finding something truly magical. A soft breeze rustled through the oak's leaves, creating a whispered symphony that seemed to speak directly to their young hearts. The map pulsed gently in response, as if acknowledging the wind's greeting, and new details appeared on its surface. Tiny footprints materialized along the golden path, 3 sets that matched their own sizes perfectly, leading away from the village toward adventure. The fireflies gathered closer, forming a living constellation around the children, their synchronized blinking, creating patterns that mirrored the symbols on the map's borders. It felt like the entire meadow held its breath, waiting to see what these 3 young discoverers would do with this extraordinary gift. The ancient oak creaked gently, a sound that might have been the settling of old wood, or might have been encouragement from a guardian that had waited patiently for the right children to find its hidden treasure. As the first cricket began its evening song, the 3 friends looked at each other with eyes bright with possibility. Without speaking, they understood that their lives had just changed. That summer evening spent playing tag and catching fireflies had transformed into something far more wondrous. The map rolled gently in their hands, warm and reassuring, a promise of adventures yet to come, of magical realms waiting just beyond the edge of the ordinary world they'd always known. Dawn crept across the village like a watercolor painting coming to life, soft pinks and oranges bleeding into the indigo remnants of night. The 3 children met beneath the ancient oak, their eyes still heavy with sleep, but bright with anticipation. The map rested in Alex's small backpack, its gentle warmth radiating through the fabric like a heartbeat. They had each told their parents they would be playing in the meadow, a truth that stretched only as far as their starting point. The golden thread on the map pulsed stronger now, lifting from the parchment surface to create a shimmering ribbon of light that only they could see. It wound away from the oak tree, leading toward the whispering willow grove that bordered the village, a place where the older children claimed fairies lived but none had ever proven it. Mia reached out tentatively, her fingers passing through the golden light, feeling only a pleasant tingling sensation like sunshine on skin. They followed the luminous path as it wove between the drooping willow branches, creating a tunnel of green and gold. The willow leaves rustled with voices that weren't quite wind, sharing secrets in a language older than words. Jamie stayed close to Alex, small fingers gripping the edge of the older child's shirt, while Mia led the way with careful steps, watching how the golden thread adjusted its course to avoid roots and rabbit holes. The grove grew denser, more mysterious, with shadows that danced independently of the branches that cast them. Morning dew clung to spiderwebs like tiny crystal chandeliers, and somewhere in the canopy above, birds sang melodies that seemed to harmonize with the map's gentle humming. The air smelled of earth and growing things, mixed with something sweeter, like honey and cinnamon combined. A flash of silver caught their attention, moving too deliberately to be wind-blown leaves. The children froze, watching as a fox emerged from behind a particularly ancient willow, its coat shimmering like liquid moonlight. The creature's eyes held an intelligence that went beyond animal instinct. Amber depths that reflected centuries of accumulated wisdom. It sat primly on the path, tail curled around its paws, blocking their way forward with an air of patient expectation. The fox tilted its head, studying each child in turn, its gaze lingering longest on the glowing map, visible through Alex's backpack. When it spoke, The children felt the words more than heard them, resonating in their minds like remembered music. The fox explained that the path ahead required proof of their bond, that magical realms only opened their doors to those whose friendship ran deeper than mere companionship. The first riddle came, wrapped in morning mist, asking what grew stronger when shared but never diminished when divided among friends. The children huddled together, whispering their thoughts while the fox waited with infinite patience. Jamie suggested laughter, remembering how their giggles always multiplied when they were together. Mia thought of secrets, how sharing them made friendships deeper. But Alex, looking at both friends, understood the answer was joy itself, how happiness expanded exponentially when experienced together. As they spoke the answer in unison, the ground beneath their feet shimmered, and a stepping stone materialized in the air before them, hovering over what they now realized was a river hidden by morning fog. The water below sparkled with an inner light, clear as crystal, but somehow containing entire galaxies in its depths. The second riddle followed immediately, asking what could be broken without touching, yet grew stronger after mending. This time Mia led their discussion, her thoughtful nature guiding them toward the answer. She remembered when Jamie had accidentally broken her favorite toy, how their friendship had wavered but ultimately strengthened through forgiveness. Trust, they declared together. And another stepping stone appeared, creating a partial bridge across the impossible river. The fox's expression softened, approval glowing in those ancient eyes. The final riddle came gentler than the others, asking what remained constant through seasons of change, storms of doubt, and distances of separation. The children didn't need to discuss this one. They had known each other since before memory truly began, through scraped knees and lost teeth, through birthdays and thunderstorms. Love, they said simply, the word carrying the weight of their shared history, and the bridge completed itself with a series of stones that glowed like captured starlight. The fox rose gracefully, padding across the bridge with steps that barely disturbed the air. The children followed, Jamie's initial fear forgotten in the wonder of walking on light itself. Below them the river sang a song without words, its melody weaving through their hearts like silver thread. Each stepping stone felt warm and solid beneath their feet, responding to their trust with unwavering support. On the far bank, the fox paused, turning to face them one final time. Its form began to shimmer, becoming translucent like morning mist, but its voice remained clear in their minds. It spoke of the journey ahead, of challenges that would test, not their individual courage, but their combined strength. The fox explained that every magical being they would meet would recognize the light of true friendship that surrounded them like an invisible shield. As the fox faded completely, the air where it had stood filled with fireflies, though the sun now climbed toward noon. These were different from the evening fireflies they knew, their light steadier, more purposeful. The insects arranged themselves into a living arrow, pointing toward a meadow visible through the thinning trees. Their humming created a melody that wrapped around the children like a gentle embrace, carrying notes of bravery and whispers of wonders yet to come. The golden thread from the map now intertwined with the firefly's path, creating a braid of light that pulsed with warm encouragement. The children walked forward together, hands linked, hearts synchronized with the rhythm of adventure. Behind them, the stepping stones dissolved back into morning mist, but ahead, the meadow beckoned with possibilities as endless as the sky above, where clouds gathered in shapes that looked remarkably like smiling faces. The fireflies formed a luminous river in the air, their synchronized dance leading the three children up a winding path that seemed to rise more steeply with each step. The meadow gradually transformed into a hillside, shrouded in mist, so thick it felt like walking through cotton candy, soft and slightly sweet on their tongues. Jamie reached out to touch the vapor, giggling as it swirled around small fingers like a playful cat. The fog grew denser as they climbed, until they could barely see each other despite holding hands, relying on the firefly's steady glow to guide them forward. The ground beneath their feet changed from grass to something softer, spongier, as if the earth itself had become a cushion. Mia noticed at first how their footsteps no longer made sound, how the world had grown quiet, except for a distant rumbling that resembled friendly thunder. The mist began to part, like curtains being drawn back, revealing a sight that made all three children stop in wonder, their mouths forming perfect circles of amazement. Before them sat a being so large that at first they mistook him for part of the mountain itself. The cloud giant's form seemed carved from the mist, solid yet somehow soft, with features that shifted gently like clouds passing across the sun. His beard flowed like a waterfall of fog, and his eyes twinkled with the light of 1,000 stars hidden behind the softest grey. When he noticed the children, his face broke into a smile so warm it felt like sunshine breaking through storm clouds. The giant's laugh rumbled through the hilltop like distant thunder, but instead of frightening them, it wrapped around the children like the coziest blanket. He leaned down slowly, carefully, his movements creating small whirlwinds that played with their hair. His voice, when he spoke without words, but through feelings and images that appeared in their minds, felt like hot chocolate on a cold day, rich and comforting and impossibly sweet. With infinite gentleness, the giant extended his palm, which was easily the size of their entire village square. The surface wasn't skin but condensed cloud, warm and yielding, smelling of rain and sunshine mixed together. Alex stepped on first, brave as always, sinking slightly into the cloudy surface before finding it surprisingly supportive. Mia and Jamie followed, clutching each other as the giant lifted them slowly, so slowly they barely felt movement, until they realized the ground had become a distant memory far below. The giant cradled them carefully as he stood to his full height, his head nearly touching the actual clouds that drifted lazily overhead. From this vantage point, the children could see the floating islands the map had promised, suspended in the air like jewels on invisible strings. Each island glowed with its own inner light, some green with endless gardens, others silver with moonlit pools, and still others golden with fields of singing wheat. He set them down on what appeared to be nothing but condensed cloud, yet it held their weight perfectly. 3 individual cloud platforms materialized beneath their feet, soft as pillows but stable as stone. The giant gestured toward the floating islands with one massive hand, and the cloud platforms began to drift forward, carried by winds that seemed to know exactly where to take them. The fireflies dispersed into the mist with tiny flashes of farewell, their job complete. The journey through the sky felt like floating in a dream, the cloud platforms responding to their thoughts, rising when they wished to see over a particularly tall cloud bank, dipping when they wanted to trail their fingers through wisps of vapor. The giant walked alongside them, his steps creating small clouds that dissipated like dandelion seeds. He hummed as they travelled, a melody that resonated through the air itself, making everything vibrate with peaceful contentment. Time seemed to stretch like taffy in this realm above the world, minutes feeling like hours, hours like moments. The sun painted the clouds in shades of gold and pink and lavender, creating a landscape that shifted constantly yet remained eternally beautiful. Birds made of pure light swooped past them, leaving trails of rainbow colors that lingered in the air like aurora borealis brought down from the Arctic sky. The sound of water reached them before they saw its source, a tinkling melody that grew stronger as their cloud platforms adjusted course. Through a break in the clouds appeared a waterfall, unlike anything in the world below, its water crystal clear but somehow flowing upward, as well as down, creating loops and spirals that defied every law of nature the children had learned. The water sparkled with an inner light, each droplet containing a tiny rainbow that burst into colour when it caught the sun. Beside the impossible waterfall, seated on a throne of woven water lilies that floated on nothing but air, was a figure of such serene beauty that the children felt their hearts grow calm just looking at her. The river nymph's hair flowed like the waterfall itself, constantly moving, constantly changing, sometimes appearing silver, sometimes blue, sometimes the pure clear of mountain streams. Her dress seemed made of mist and starlight, flowing around her in patterns that told stories without words. When she began to sing, the world stopped to listen. Her voice carried the sound of every peaceful stream, every gentle rain, every drop of morning dew that had ever existed. The melody wrapped around the children like liquid silk, seeping into their hearts and washing away worries they didn't even know they carried. Jamie's fear of the dark dissolved like sugar in warm water. Mia's anxiety about the upcoming school year evaporated like morning mist. Alex's secret concern about being brave enough for this adventure melted away like snow in spring. The nymph rose from her throne, moving with the fluid grace of water itself, and approached their cloud platforms. She cupped her hands, and crystal-clear water appeared from nowhere, forming perfect spheres that floated toward each child. The water didn't feel wet when it touched them, but cool and refreshing, like the memory of the perfect summer day. As the spheres enveloped them briefly, they felt renewed, energized, as if they had just woken from the most restful sleep of their lives. The cloud giant watched with gentle eyes as the nymph blessed each child with a touch to their forehead, leaving behind a tiny mark that glowed briefly before fading a protection for the journey ahead. She sang one final note that hung in the air like a bell's resonance, and the waterfall responded by sending out a mist that sparkled with every color imaginable, coating the children in tiny droplets that felt like liquid starlight. Their cloud platforms began to move again, guided by the giant's gentle gestures toward the nearest floating island, now close enough to see gardens where flowers grew in impossible spirals and trees bore fruit that glowed like lanterns. The nymph waved farewell, her form already blending back into the waterfall, becoming one with the eternal flow of magical water. The giant hummed his thunderous lullaby as he prepared to deliver them to their next destination, his cloudy form already beginning to merge with the mist around them. As the first floating island drew near, its edges decorated with vines that grew silver leaves and golden flowers, the children felt a deep peace settle in their hearts. The worries of the ordinary world seemed very far away, replaced by a certainty that this adventure was exactly where they needed to be. The cloud platforms began their gentle descent toward a landing area, carpeted in moss that sparkled like emeralds, where new wonders awaited their discovery. Silver moonlight bathed the final floating island in luminescence, so pure it seemed to transform everything into living pearl, casting no shadows but instead creating gentle halos around every blade of grass, every flower petal, every grain of sand that sparkled like crushed diamonds beneath their feet. The children stepped off their cloud platforms onto ground that felt different from earth, softer, yet more substantial, as if woven from moonbeams and starlight compressed into something almost tangible. The air here tasted of vanilla and lavender, sweet dreams and peaceful nights, combined into an atmosphere that made their eyelids immediately grow heavy with the most pleasant drowsiness. At the island's center, beneath the tree whose leaves shimmered like mirrors reflecting distant galaxies, sat a creature of such gentle beauty that the children felt their hearts slow to match its peaceful rhythm. The moon hare's fur gleamed white as fresh snow, but somehow contained depths of silver and blue, shifting with each tiny movement like ocean waves under moonlight. Its ears, impossibly long and delicate, drooped with sleepiness, and its eyes, when they slowly opened to regard the visitors, held the soft grey of dawn skies just before sunrise. The hare yawned, a gesture so contagious that all three children found themselves yawning in response. And when it spoke, its voice came like whispers through silk curtains, soft and rustling and infinitely comforting. It told them stories without beginning or end, tales that flowed one into another like streams joining a river, about how the moon gathered the day's adventures each night, and transformed them into dreams, how every journey through magical realms eventually led to rest, how sleep itself was the greatest magic, allowing souls to process wonders and prepare for new discoveries. As the moon hare spoke, its words became visible in the air, forming delicate silver threads that wove themselves into patterns more beautiful than any tapestry. The children watched, mesmerized, as their own adventure appeared in the glowing strands, showing their discovery of the map, their meeting with the fox, their flight with the cloud giant, their blessing from the river nymph, each memory rendered in moonlight and shadow that danced before their increasingly heavy eyes. The hare rose slowly, stretching with the deliberate grace of creatures who have all of eternity to complete simple movements, and hopped toward a hollow in the tree that the children hadn't noticed before. Inside, bathed in concentrated moonbeams that seemed to pour through the wood itself like liquid light, sat an ancient chest that appeared carved from a single piece of midnight blue stone, its surface decorated with constellations that actually twinkled as real stars do. With paws that moved like meditation itself, the moon hare opened the chest, revealing contents that made the children gasp, despite their growing drowsiness. Inside lay hundreds, perhaps thousands of glowing orbs, each no larger than a marble but containing entire worlds within their crystalline depths. The orbs pulsed with soft light, some golden like sunset, others silver like starlight, still others in shades of blue and green and purple that had no names in waking language. The hare selected 3 orbs with careful consideration, each one beginning to glow brighter as it recognized its intended recipient. The first, handed to Alex, swirled with images of bravery and leadership, showing moments of courage from their adventure that Alex hadn't even realized were courageous. The second, placed in Mia's palm, sparkled with creativity and wonder, containing her unique way of seeing magic in everything. The third, given to Jamie, glowed with pure joy and trust, holding the innocent faith that made everything possible. As the children held their dream orbs, they felt memories settling into their hearts like seeds in fertile soil, ready to bloom into the most beautiful dreams. The moon hare explained in its drowsy voice that these orbs would ensure they never forgot this adventure, that even in the ordinary world, they would carry magic within them, accessible whenever they closed their eyes and remembered. The hare led them to a nest it had prepared, woven from starlit moss that glowed with the softest phosphorescence, lined with flower petals that released a gentle fragrance promoting peaceful sleep. The moss felt warmer than the finest blanket, softer than their beds at home, more inviting than anything they had ever experienced. As they settled into the nest, their bodies seemed to sink into comfort itself, every muscle relaxing, every worry dissolving. Around them the island began to hum with a lullaby that seemed to come from the very atoms of existence, a frequency that resonated with their heartbeats and gradually slowed them towards sleep. The moon hare curled beside them, its presence radiating safety and protection, its breathing creating a rhythm that their own breathing naturally followed. The dream orbs in their hands pulsed in sync with their hearts, growing warmer, their light beginning to merge with the children's own inner light. The stars above arranged themselves into patterns that told bedtime stories without words, constellations shifting and dancing in slow, hypnotic movements that drew their gazing eyes along paths toward dreams. The trees' mirror leaves reflected not their faces, but their happiest memories, surrounding them with joy and love as sleep approached on velvet paws. Everything grew softer, hazier, more beautiful as the boundary between waking and sleeping began to blur, the adventure transforming into the sweetest dream. The moonbeams wove themselves into ribbons of pure silver light, wrapping gently around the three sleeping children like the softest cocoon imaginable. The moon hare watched with ancient eyes as the luminous strands lifted them from the starlit nest, cradling their small forms with infinite tenderness. The dream orbs clutched in their hands pulsed with steady rhythm, synchronized with their peaceful breathing as the night breeze began its gentle work of carrying them home. The floating island grew distant below them, becoming just another star in the vast tapestry of night, while the moon herself seemed to lean closer, bathing their journey in her most protective light. The children drifted through clouds that parted like silk curtains, their bodies weightless as dandelion seeds on the wind. Jamie's face wore the smallest smile, fingers still curled around the glowing orb that painted dreams across closed eyelids. Mia's breathing came deep and even, her dream orb casting rainbow reflections that danced across her peaceful features. Alex, even in deepest sleep, maintained that protective posture, one arm stretched slightly toward the others as if guarding them even in dreams. The night breeze knew every current, every thermal, every secret pathway through the sky that would carry them safely home. It whispered to the stars, asking them to light the way, and they responded by brightening just enough to create a celestial road. The children floated along this path of starlight, their forms glowing with the residual magic of their adventure, leaving trails of silver mist that dissipated like morning fog, touched by sunrise. Below them, the world slept peacefully, villages dotted with warm lights from windows where families gathered, forests dark and mysterious with their own nocturnal magic, rivers reflecting the moon like ribbons of molten silver. The wind carried them over all of this, a grand tour of the sleeping world that their unconscious minds absorbed, adding layers to their dreams that would emerge in future nights as vague memories of flying. As they descended toward their own village, the familiar sights began to emerge from the darkness. The church spire pointed toward heaven like a finger marking their destination. The mill wheel stood still in the darkness, waiting for dawn to resume its patient turning. The cottages clustered together like sleeping sheep, peaceful and protected. And there, at the meadow's edge, stood the ancient oak tree, its branches reaching up as if to catch them, to welcome them home. The moonbeams lowered them with extraordinary care onto the soft grass beneath the oak, the same spot where their adventure had begun, what felt like lifetimes ago. The impact was gentler than a butterfly, landing on a flower petal. For a moment they remained perfectly still, their bodies adjusting to the solid earth beneath them after their ethereal journey through the sky. Jamie stirred first, eyes fluttering open to reveal the confusion that comes with waking from the deepest dreams. The dream orb in small hands still glowed softly, casting warm light across a face that struggled to determine what was real and what was fantasy. Then Mia awakened, sitting up slowly, grass marks pressed into her cheek, her dream orb pulsing with memories that felt too vivid to be mere imagination. Alex came to consciousness last, protective instincts immediately checking that both friends were safe before fully processing their location. They looked at each other in the moonlight, no words necessary, as their eyes communicated everything. The dream orbs in their hands were undeniably real, warm and solid and glowing with inner light. Their clothes carried the scent of cloud and starlight. Their hearts still beat with the rhythm of adventure. Without speaking, they moved closer together, forming a small circle beneath the oak tree, hands joining around their dream orbs until the three spheres touched, creating a triangle of light. In that moment of connection, they made silent promises that needed no voice. They would remember everything. They would keep the magic alive in their hearts. They would return to this spot whenever the ordinary world became too heavy. And remember that somewhere above the clouds, magical realms waited for them. The dream orbs pulsed once, brilliantly, sealing their promise with light that sank into their hearts like seeds of future wonder. Rising on unsteady legs that remembered flying more clearly than walking, they helped each other stand. The village path stretched before them, familiar yet forever changed by what they now knew existed beyond it. They walked slowly, reluctantly, each step carrying them further from adventure, but closer to the warm beds that their bodies craved. At the spot where their paths diverged toward their respective homes, they paused, exchanging one last look of shared understanding. The dream orb's glow followed each child home, creating gentle halos of light that guided their steps through darkened doorways, up creaking stairs, into bedrooms where worried parents had long since checked and found empty beds. But somehow, no alarm had been raised, as if the magic had whispered reassurances that all was well, that the children were simply having the most wonderful dream. As each child settled into their own bed, still clutching their dream orb, the spheres began to release their stored magic. Tendrils of light spread across their pillows, weaving into the fabric of their dreams, ensuring that every night forward would contain echoes of their adventure. The ordinary ceiling above their beds transformed in their drowsing vision into skies full of floating islands. The familiar sounds of home became the cloud giant's gentle humming. The night breeze through their windows carried the river nymph's blessing, and the moon hare's lullabies. Sleep claimed them completely, deeper and more restful than any they had known before, their bodies sinking into mattresses that felt almost as comfortable as the nest of starlit moss. The dream orbs continued their gentle pulsing throughout the night, synchronizing with heartbeats and breathing, maintaining the connection between the three friends even across the distance of their separate homes. In their dreams, they flew again through clouds of silver and gold, met creatures of impossible beauty and wisdom, and discovered that magic wasn't something that existed only in special places, but something they carried within themselves, accessible whenever they remembered to look with wonder at the world around them. The moon watched through their windows, her light blessing their sleep, ensuring their dreams would be filled with promise of future adventures, of friendship that transcended the ordinary, of magic that waited patiently for those brave enough to seek it. And in the ancient oak tree, the hollow where they had found the map glowed faintly, briefly, a sign that this was not an ending but a beginning, that the path between the ordinary and magical worlds remained open for those who knew how to find it.